Ladies and gentlemen, the time is now 5:30, and we will go ahead and call the meeting of the Board of Trustees for the November 15th meeting into order. I want to make an announcement from the start. Dr. Ramsey has strep throat, and so she is with us virtually on the computer, but she is not with us tonight, and we're hoping that she gets well quick, but she will be participating online with us today. So our first thing on the agenda is a moment of silence and the pledge. So if you'll please stand with me. And now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. I will next up.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is number 2, presentation of recognitions, awards, and announcements. And we have Ms. Ladd here to present. Welcome, Ms. Ladd. Very good, and we do want to congratulate all three of those teachers, all three of those principals, and we know what great work they do, but we also know what the other 37 principals and all their assistant principals do in this district, so we appreciate all of you guys. The time is now 5:36, and we're moving into public forum. We have quite a few speakers tonight, I believe 12 total, and so we're going to move down that list. I'm just going to remind you that we do have a 3-minute time limit, and you will be notified of your 3 minutes. And so please just be cognizant of the time that you're seeing so we can keep moving. So at the first speaker I have is Megan Kelly. Her topic is the calendar. Ms. Kelly, thank you for being here tonight.
Okay, sorry, I thought we had 5 minutes, so I'll try to read really fast. Good evening, President Murray, members of the school board, Dr. Ramsey. My name is Megan Kelly. I currently have 2 children that attend Carver Center. Tonight, I wanted to discuss the recent changes to the calendar in hopes that these changes can be overturned with the next school calendar. It was initially against the calendar change because the intersession breaks were a bit inconvenient for my family, but now I stand here against this change for so many more reasons. First, I'd like to address the district's reason for the intersessional calendar, which was remediation. The district laid out a plan to help enrich or close the achievement gap for students that were falling behind or did not pass the STAR in the previous year. The plan that was laid out to the community was that the children who were at risk would gain valuable instruction time in classes with lower student-to-teacher ratios in order to accelerate their learning. House Bill 4545 requires that these children be assigned to a class with a certified master, exemplary, or recognized teacher, and that they be delivered supplemental instruction. MISD failed to provide both of these things for many of the children that attended the fall intersession. According to Open Records, only 4,800 students attended and 443 teachers were on payroll that week. That's an average ratio of 11-to-1 district-wide, 8 more than allowable by House Bill 4545. Had all students identified as needing additional support attended, the ratio would have been much higher. Because of the lack of teachers, MISD presented waivers for parents and the parents felt pressured to sign these waivers that allowed the district to not adhere to House Bill 4545 requirements. Additionally, I learned from many students that only a few minutes were spent on actual instruction each day. The rest of the time, they were free to do whatever they wished. I know that that's not the case at every campus, but I have to question the effectiveness of the intersession when students were put in classes with a teacher that is new to them, sometimes not certified, with a room full of peers that are all behind. In summary, MISD was not in compliance with House Bill 45 requirements. They provided false information to the public, which they later corrected when it was brought to their attention, and therefore many students gained little to nothing from the 5 days of school. Next, I'd like to discuss some of the hardships the schedule caused many MISD families. Many of these have been discussed with you before, but I think it bears mentioning again before you vote on the next steps for this district. Many students come from single-parent homes in which both parents work. Having these 2 extra weeks off of school creates a scheduling nightmare for these families. They've scrambled to find childcare, been forced to use all their vacation days to be with their children, forced to lose hours in pay, or even worse, forced to leave their children unattended. Not only that, but the children that come from divorced homes also have custody agreements that are just not conducive to this intercession period. So all of these parents are forced to deal with 18%. They're forced to juggle with hopes that 18% of MISD students may attend the 10 extra days of school. Lastly, I'd like to discuss the shortening summer. There's a study out from the 80s that kind of coined this summer slip that has been since debunked. According to a new Ohio State study, students who attended year-round school actually show no increase in learning. Ladies and gentlemen, the calendar is not the golden ticket to higher test scores. Adding 10 extra days of subpar instruction will not provide the increase in test scores that MISD is hoping to achieve. Perhaps the real problem is that MISD is trying to reinvent the wheel by overutilizing computer-based apps and underutilizing the time-tested
We have reached the time limit.
teaching methods.
Thank you. The next speaker I have is Lisa Minnick, and her topic is year-round school.
Hi,
Ms.
thank
Minnick,
y'all.
welcome to the stage. Thank you for being
Thank
here.
y'all. Just to give you a brief, I am a retired teacher, not from this district, but from another district. And I want to talk about the year-round school. Rumor has it, and within a rumor, there's always a truth. And there are 114 schools, as you all know, in the state of Texas. There's the state hospital, the youth centers, charter schools, the Department of Juvenile Justice, magnet schools, UT learning centers, and UT charter schools and learning centers, which are not conducive for this environment for MISD. ECISD had a year-round school. They no longer do. Ask them why. They also had an open concept school. Ask them why they no longer have it. I encourage you to search out and really search out to the retention of year-round teachers. Find out the retention rate, how long they've taught. Some I know didn't stay the full year. Their turnover along with the student retention rate, did the students can go from kindergarten to sixth grade, or did they only go 1 year? I encourage you to do your research. Think outside of the box. We teach our students to think outside the box. I encourage you to do that as well. Come up with other options. Go over the data. Be the leader. Be MISD. Be the leader instead of the follower. I do not support year-round school or open concept or putting children on computers and programs. They need a face-to-face teacher. They need that time face-to-face. I encourage you to do your research before going into anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Minnick. The next speaker is Danielle Beecham, and the topic is safety of our schools for staff and students. Welcome, Ms. Beecham.
Good evening. My name is Danielle Beecham, and I teach at Legacy Freshman High School. Today, I stand as the voice of staff and students who can't speak out, and for parents who are unaware of the health and safety of their children at school. A total of 7 staff members have been assaulted or injured this year by students, and I'm one of them. I can't count the number of fights. I know it's up to 20 to 30 or even more fights this year. Did you hear about the street fight on Friday after school? The fight that involved colors, the fight that tried to begin in our hallway on Friday afternoon, the fight that would have resulted in numerous staff and students being assaulted or injured. On Friday afternoon was the last straw for me and why I'm here speaking out against the chaos and loss of control in our school, where students do not listen to us. They cuss us out on a weekly basis. They refuse to comply with directives to go to class. They leave class. They fight, they do drugs, they vape, they destroy property, and now we have girls going into the boys' restrooms. Daily, I watch 15 to 30 students in the hallway truant with no one pushing them to class. They leave campus and they come back. They are committing criminal offenses and coming back on campus because our school is open and not secured. They do what they want. Some are punished and some are not. Between 7th and 8th period, I was in the hall as part of my duty on Friday. I noticed a large group of at least 30 students coming down the hall in a gang-like formation, and their posture was aggressive. They were moving with purpose as if they were going to fight someone. I told the teacher we needed to be ready because something was going to happen. The tardy bell rang and they were not even fazed about it. They kept coming and we kept telling them to get to class and they did not listen. They grouped up. I immediately got in the middle of them and started waving my hands and trying to push them to class. Another group formed near where I was, so I moved quickly into that group. All I knew was I needed to keep moving in between them in hopes of stopping whatever was going to happen. Then I did the only thing I could think of, and that was to yell and scream as loud as I could. I was surrounded by a mob of students who wouldn't listen to me and wouldn't go to class. They were in control. What happens when they realize they outnumber us? What happens when they realize they can run the school? Innocent staff and students get hurt, loss of instruction and loss of property, and more assaults happen. When more teachers showed up and one administrator, they went in different directions and left the halls. We lost instruction time and our classes were unattended. We said this would happen, and this is happening. I was told by another staff member to go into my room and close the door. When someone was shot, stabbed, or seriously hurt, then maybe something would change in our school. I know they were trying to help me to keep me safe and to keep my health intact, but I'm way too stubborn for that, and I signed on for this job. My job is to teach and to help promote a safe learning environment. If I get hurt again, and I'm sure that I will, then you are going to have to deal with that. But for now, I'm speaking out for the other 900 students in our school. I'm a teacher and I'm a parent, and I would want my children's teachers to protect them at all costs. Thank you.
Ms. Beecham, thank you for coming tonight. Sir, I will warn you, the next time you have an outburst, you will be removed from the meeting. And I want to make sure you cheer for your clap for your group, but we need to be under control. This is an official meeting and we need to be under control. So that's a warning to the group. The next speaker is Casey Merrill, and the topic is community involvement and awareness. Ms. Merrill, thank you for joining us tonight.
Managed instruction theory of action, earned autonomy theory of action, system of great schools. These terms are mentioned in a report item this evening titled Innovation Update. I took a poll today after I read this item on the agenda, and I asked the following on a community Facebook page and polled community members that I knew were involved with the school district this question. Without Googling for answers, do you know what the following items are in regards to Midland ISD? And by that I mean, could you explain to someone who does not know what it means or what it looks like? Managed instruction theory, earned autonomy theory, system of great schools theory. The answers to choose from were, yes, I know what all three mean. I have heard them, but I don't know what they mean. I know and understand what one of them is. I know and understand what two of them are. No, I have not heard of any of them. Out of 111 people who responded to my poll, 99 of them have not heard or understand what any of these terms mean. 6 people have heard of the terms, but didn't know what they meant. 5 understood what one of them was. 1 understood what 2 of them were, and 0 of the 111 people who responded understood what all of them meant. Why is that? It isn't for a lack of trying or being involved. These are PTA people, they're involved parents, some of them are teachers, some of them are staff. I hope this raises red flags for you as board members, that your administration and some of the people you employ don't understand the educational models that you guys are pushing. Last month, the Learning, Leading, and Innovation team asked for $399,000 for a tutoring program called Book Nook. I'm curious how much you all were able to research that before you voted on it. I submitted an open records request to get answers. So far, I haven't gotten an answer. Now on the contracts over $100,000 list that is on the agenda for tonight is the Student Services Department asking to the tune of $154,000 for curriculum, social emotional learning, and foundations of school professional development from a company called Character Strong. What does that look like? Do you guys know the answer to that? We as community members don't have the opportunity to ask questions. We are relying on you to advocate for us to ask the hard questions, and who, what, where, when, and why is a good point to start. The word transparency is thrown around a lot in conversation about MISD. Why isn't information more easily accessible? Why aren't public forums held for parents to ask questions and for the district to get feedback? When it comes to curriculum, to the resources being used, the programs being utilized, and the technology, parents are left out. As a parent, I can only assume that you want me to be left out because you don't want pushback. The school calendar is a hot topic right now. I will be curious to know if you guys value our feedback, if it's valued or discarded. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Carlin McBroom, and the topic is Legacy Freshman High School. Welcome, Mrs. McBroom.
I would just like to say good evening, board members and Superintendent Ramsey. I have lived in Midland for 44 years, and I have never, ever heard of the conduct that is going on in these school systems. These teachers should not have to be putting up with this kind of behavior. I'm here to speak about the safety and security issues at Legacy Freshman High School. Our granddaughter is a teacher at the campus, and after a couple of weeks ago's lockdown, we decided to speak out on her behalf. As grandparents, we want her to be safe and happy at her place of employment. She is neither of those things this year. Every day, she tells us stories of how difficult this year has been. The stories she tells about what is happening at the school scares us and makes us fear for her safety. Since the first day of school, she has told us of countless fights, several of which includes teachers or other staff hurting themselves. Also, part of a sink was dropped on a student's head on the same day that there was a lockdown. That lockdown and the way it was handled were the last straws in our minds, which is why we are here. We have told her she should leave her job to find a place where her safety is not at risk. Her commitment to her students is the reason she has not already left. She loves her students and wants to be there for them. She knows that leaving in the middle of the year will affect them. And so she heeds not our advice and chooses to stay at the school for now. There are students who are afraid to go to the bathroom during the school day. There are teachers looking for immediate job openings in order to leave the campus as soon as possible. Several other teachers are considering transfers or looking for jobs in other districts. This should not be happening. We understand some actions have been taken since the lockdown, but we want to know why it took so long for the district to take action and help the campus. Why were the students allowed to run the campus for 13 weeks? We want to know actions will continue to be taken to bring the campus under control, and the district is working to ensure the students and staff, including our granddaughter, are safe in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Broom. The next speaker we have is Wendy Parsley, and her topic is late grading policy. Welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you all for your service before I start. My name is Wendy Parsley, and I have been a teacher for over 30 years. A lot of those years have been in Midland. I currently work for the Homebound Department as a special ed / general education teacher. So I have a lot of contacts when I go to campuses with a lot of teachers, with a lot of parents of my students and all of this. All that to say that I have a broad range of knowledge about how the late grading policy is affecting the secondary students in our district. So I'm going to read this for you in case everybody's not familiar with it. Teachers will notify students of due dates for all assignments and any changes to due dates. Students who do not turn in assignments by the designated dates may be subject to the late grading penalties in accordance with classroom procedures. The maximum penalties may be applied. 1 school day late, a maximum grade of 90, 2 days late, a maximum grade of 80. Parents should be contacted regarding work that is 2 or more days late. 3 to 5 days late, a maximum grade of 70, and after 5 school days late, a grade of 0 may be assigned. The problem with the policy is that it's not good for parents, teachers, or students, and here's why. So students, first of all, some of these kids are 12 and 13 years old, and honestly, I have some at my house, and they're not responsible enough or mature enough to keep up with all of that and make sure that everything is turned in on time. We're working on it. It's our job to scaffold them from where they are to where they need to be. And scaffolding is not the means of a negative consequence. I don't believe that that's going to work. It's not good for parents because as we're supposed to be notified after 2 days late or at 2 days late, and we're not getting notified because we get the notifications from Skyward, Well, that doesn't take place until the teachers put the assignments in and mark them as missing. So sometimes that's 5 to 10 days before we hear about it, and the kid's already getting a failing grade or a lot of times a 0. The reason that it's not good for teachers is because for us to have to notify every single parent every time a student is 2 days late by email or text or something is a logistical nightmare. There's really no way to do it. I would like to suggest that the policy be changed to say this. If teachers choose, well, my other point is that the policy, as it's written, is kind of open for interpretation. And a lot of teachers think that it's mandated because it's written down. But that's not the way I'm reading it. I'm reading it as a choice of the classroom teacher. So I'd like to suggest that it be changed to this. If teachers choose to deduct points for late work, no more than 10 points may be deducted per day that the work is late. Point deductions may not begin until after the assignment has been entered in Skyward and flagged as missing, so as the communication is sent to the parents. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Parsley. And the next speaker we have is Andrew Clark. And the topic is the calendar. And I hope I got that right, Mr. Clark. Thank you.
I'll make this really quick because Ms. Megan Kelly said everything I needed to say much more eloquently than I did. The school calendar for our family in general hasn't been successful. So I got 3 kids, all of which are in MISD, all of which excel in the classroom and do very well. Our kids and my wife and I, who's also an MISD school teacher, feel like it's punishment for our kids. It's a scenario where they want to be in the classroom, right? They want to be done with school. That's 2 weeks during the year they're having to go. They're extending the summer break, and we have kids that enjoy athletics, much like some of your kids. And we would appreciate you all taking a look back and reconsidering how the calendar looks and what you guys are doing in the future. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. The next speaker we have is Heidi Kirk, and the topic is safety and security. Hi, Heidi.
First, before I start, I want you to know the stream's not working. We have a lot of people trying to watch, and for some reason, it's not going. Just doesn't, FYI. Safety and security. I have many concerns about the state of education in our district right now, but safety and security at the forefront of them. If our students and staff are not safe and secure, then nothing else matters, not even academics. At LFHS, we've had significant safety and security issues this year. We did not even make it to first period on the first day of school without a fight on campus. That day ended with 5 fights. We continue to have so many fights and illegal activities on campus that we frequently are not allowed to send students to MAP because we have more students there than we are allotted. On Friday, a large fight almost began in the hallways between 7th and 8th period that resulted in a street brawl after school let out. Where will those students go if we can't send them to MAP? Back to our campus to continue to wreak havoc like what has been happening so far this year? I sincerely hope not. That is why I'm here today. The lockdown 12 days ago was not as simple as what was presented to the board and media. Thankfully, no weapon was found when the students were arrested on campus. Next time we have a lockdown, there might actually be a weapon. For many teachers and students, it feels like that day might be in our near future. Over the last 2 weeks, I've had several conversations some even with people in this room. Thank you for listening. I'm grateful for your time and for the things that began to be implemented, but it's not yet enough because Friday happened after all of it. While not all of our students are part of the problem, the ones that are acting with total disregard for people and the campus have taken control of our school. Students are afraid to go to the bathroom. Teachers are concerned for their own welfare while in the hallways and in main areas. Some have even been injured. Our school is continually being vandalized. Students roam the halls with no regard to the adults who tell them to go to class, and more students than ever before are telling the teachers off when they get angry. It is an ongoing problem of which I have not even scratched the surface in my descriptions. Discipline has long been an issue in Midland ISD. A large number of students in this group of freshmen have some of the worst behavior many teachers have experienced in all their years here. While COVID may be a factor in the severity, many of these students have been an issue since before it began. We must stop blaming COVID for all our problems. They're not new. I am supportive of restorative discipline, but it alone will not solve the problem. It must be part of a comprehensive discipline plan that shows students these behaviors will not be tolerated. If you want more trauma-informed educators, train them, but with more than a 30-minute vector video or optional TEA email every once in a while. But don't disregard our safety to implement this. I do not want to be part of raising a generation of Midland students who have complete disregard for the consequences of their actions because they have never truly experienced them. Right now, there are teachers who are actively working to find jobs and who plan to leave immediately when they find them, even if it means losing their teaching licenses. But that is just the beginning of what could happen at the end of the year if you do not do something now. We may be expendable to the district, but we are not expendable to the ones who love us at home. Every teacher I know would agree that academics are a priority. We want a better district, but we cannot afford to focus so much on the academic progress that we are blind to the safety and security of our students and staff. Without significant and immediate help, our campus will continue to decline. What has to happen before you realize the severity of the situation? That question scares me, and it should scare you too.
Thank you, Mrs. Kirk. Our next speaker is Susan Couch, and her topic is Survey for Calendar. Mrs. Couch, welcome to the podium.
Thank you. Board, I am a 27-year veteran teacher of MISD. I normally come up here and that's what I address as a teacher. Today, I'm addressing as a parent. If I had not been a teacher in the district, I would have never known about the survey that was sent out for feedback in order to help DEIC create calendars. I never saw it on the MISD social media pages or my son's school page. He is a student at Legacy Freshman. I've never had any contact about it other than the email that I received from being on DEIC. I think if we want true feedback from all the involved stakeholders, especially the community, we as a district have to do a better job of being proactive and disseminating all information to all stakeholders. That includes our students, our parents, and the community, as well as the teachers involved on DEIC. I am a very involved parent in my child's education, and the only reason I even knew of this survey is because I received it as a teacher, not as a parent, not as a community member. My son attends Legacy Freshman, and I have to stand here and agree with everything Ms. Beecham and Ms. Kirk have said tonight. I have heard horror stories on my son's behalf. Mr. Murray and Mr. Bishop, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we sat at Bonham Elementary and we discussed these very issues. This is just another example. I wish you had been able to have joined us that night. This makes me even more wonder, is Zane safe at LFHS? He deserves to go to school and not worry about all the drugs in the bathroom, weapons, and fights that are going on. These issues, I know, were pre-COVID. I taught these students as 6th graders at Bonham Elementary.
Thank you, Mrs. Couch. Our next speaker is Ashley St. John. Ms. St. John will be speaking on the freshman school. Ms. St. John, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. Hi, I'm Ashley St. John, the mother of Dylan St. John, the student that was assaulted at Legacy Freshman on November 2nd. He was using the restroom when a few boys came into the bathroom, broke off a piece of the sink, and threw it over the stall, knocking my son in the head and giving him a concussion. He had to miss his last football game along with basketball tryouts because of the actions of these boys and their negligence. Me or his father have not received one phone call from administration giving me an update or letting me know how the investigation is going. Through multiple sources, teachers, parents, and other students at this school, these boys are still attending class and have yet to receive any punishment for their actions. Apparently, this is not the first time these boys have thrown things over the stalls in the bathroom. Just the first time they have done something that caused injury. My son was very lucky. So I ask what y'all are doing to protect these students and teachers. I graduated from Robert E. Lee in 2001, so I attended this school. I understand kids will Kids will fight and make poor choices, but when I was a student, I never feared going to the bathroom. Why has it changed so much in 20 years since I have gone to school? Is it because these students know there is no punishment for their actions? Sorry, I'm emotional, it's my son. Well, we are creating a much bigger problem if that is the case. That is not real life. These children need to understand that if you make poor choices, you will be punished. I have watched numerous fights while picking up my son from school. I have heard him and his friends talk about the Snapchat fights that go around like crazy. I've spoken to other parents and staff and have so many more stories, as you can tell. It's appalling. I'm not just talking about the freshman school. I'm talking across MISD. A lot of teachers refer to the school as a prison. This is unacceptable. This is who is teaching our next generation, and they should always feel safe. This is becoming a new normal for our children to live with. When do we start putting them first? I'm not just here to stand for my boys. I'm also here to stand for all the students and staff at MISD and Legacy Freshmen. We have to do better. So I have a question for you. We spent a lot of taxpayer money renaming a school to keep the same mascot, but we have 2 freshman schools that are in the same, if not worse, condition than when I attended. Also, we own a golf course, and we can't provide extra security for students and staff. Why is that? So I'm taking it upon myself to protect staff and students. So I want to start a program called Dads on Duty. They will help patrol the halls and help the security at MISD through all campuses. I will be bringing my proposal to the next meeting. There are a lot of organizations that can help with these kinds of situations. So in conclusion, we as parents, taxpayers, and members of this community are wanting more from y'all. Stand up and help protect our next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. St. John. And I will ask you, as a fact, not as a question to you, I appreciate the fact that you have a plan for dads. You need to go, if you will meet with the principal and get that through her. I also myself reached out to your PTSA president last week to talk about a dad's program. So I would be more than welcome to help you with that, but let's do that. Make sure we go through the right chain because this board can't do anything, but that principal will be the right person to speak with. Thank you. The next speaker is Reagan Hinojos, and his topic is district recognitions. Welcome, Mr. Hinojos.
I'm gonna read really fast. First, I want to thank organizations like Rope Youth, Teen Flow, Community Worship Center, Be the Change, the Legacy Freshman PTA, the Chamber of Commerce, Partners in Education, Superintendent Garcia for willing to work together to make Legacy Freshmen an optimal learning environment. There's a meeting that we'll address and try to help out with those issues. I want to take the time once again to thank Coach Felt, Torres, Lopez, Raymond Olivas, and law enforcement and the rest of the MISD athletic department and staff that put on the football games. It takes a lot of collaboration, planning, and coordination. No one sees the hard work done behind the scenes to give our public the Friday night lights that we're famous for. And after having to deal with an inconvenient governor's visit, I think they all deserve a day at the spa for a great night to show off our city. I want to thank the Department of Special Services for their continued collaboration with the special needs organizations in the area. Jennifer Warren and her staff have been actively working to collaborate and nurture relationships between organizations like MARC, Midland Children's Rehab, Permia Care, Bynum School, and Share Respite. I'd like to thank Russell Myers of Midland Memorial Hospital and the hospital's payment of the $16,000 contract fee to bring the search program that not only will train our 18-plus special needs students for an internship at the hospital and a job opportunity after 1 year, but will also help facilitate employment searches with other potential employers. I also want to thank Coach Felt and Coach Lopez for working with Special Services Department and helping facilitate the Special Olympics collaboration with Laura Arthur, who is the MISD Life Skills Director. They've been very helpful nurturing, facilitating the new relationship with MISD and Special Olympics. I have met with Nicole Roman and Taylor Harris in the Guidance and Counseling Department. And let me tell you, the amount of work they've put in the past 2 years through COVID to today, they have amassed a great inventory of resources for teachers, students, and families. And the only thing now left to do is to figure out how to plug those teachers, students, and families with what they have to offer. Finally, I'm under time. I want to wish the Legacy Rebels good luck on defeating the South Lake Carroll Dragons. I'm seeking revenge for our MHS softball team who lost to them last year in the area round of playoffs. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker tonight is Courtney Ratliff, and he will be speaking on YWLA. Mr. Ratliff, welcome.
Dr. Ramsey, Mr. Pounds, and members of the board. Let me begin by again giving praise to the unrecognized fine arts in MISD. On October 31st, following a football game, the Midland High School Bulldog Band loaded buses and made the 5-hour trip to El Paso, where they competed in the highly competitive Area A marching contest held at the Sun Bowl and was named a finalist. The Bulldog Band placed 5th, their highest finish in over 15 years. Since our district fine arts director has not done so, I would like to take this opportunity to publicly congratulate Brian Collins, Stephanie Humphrey, Raul Villanueva, Myra Garcia, the parent supporters, and of course, the incredible students in the Bulldog Band. Now for the reason why I'm addressing you today. There was an attempt to take yet another neighborhood school away from the South Midland community. Prior to Friday evening, this board planned to present a plan to close the Washington STEM Academy and give that campus to the Young Women's Leadership Academy. It seems that every time a charter school or school with the ability to handpick its students needs a building, the first choice is a school in South or East Midland. We saw it first with Carver, then Crockett, then Travis. If I had not received a notification about this plan and communicated with the community members of South and East Midland, tonight's agenda would have looked different. Dr. Ramsey, you want us all to be MISD, but you were ready to ignore a segment of the community to satisfy the contractual obligation created by the YWLA. Let me be clear on 2 points. There is great benefit to YWLA, and I believe they should have a home of their own. But let me also be clear that the South and East communities will not be pillaged again. Give our kids an opportunity to experience neighborhood schools like the kids on the other side of town. After all, they are MISD too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ratliff. That concludes our public forum, and so now we will move into item 4, and the time is 6:14. The consent agenda. Item A, board meeting minutes. Item B, monthly financials. Item C, contracts over 100,000. Item D, personnel appointments. Item E, donations to the district. Board members, are there any of these items you would like pulled from the consent agenda? Hearing none, we will deem those approved by consent. Item 5 is district presentations, which we have none. Item 6 is district reports, reports only. 6A, superintendent update. Item 6B, innovation update, and item 6C, staffing update. Board, are there any of these items or people you would like to have come to the front to ask questions?
Mr. President, I do have one. Let me get it.
Mr.
board members.
Good evening, Mr. Bailey.
I guess it's kind of for exactly the page, but where we have our staffing update and the numbers for resignations. I see 7 for December and 1 for January already. Type deals that are going on.
Yes, sir. So as you see on the information that's presented, it's as we receive those resignations or retirement notices, it's the effective month that they are, those resignations will become effective. So it's not just received in that month, it's the month that they will become effective.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. The next item is item 7, discussion action items. 7A is academic update, board goals. The first one is board goal 4, annual target, and we have Dr. Cuellar and Mr. Horner to present. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening, President Murray, members of the board, and Superintendent Ramsey. We're here to present on the annual board goal report, specifically on board goal 4, which highlights graduation. This goal centers on the 4-year graduation rate, which will increase from 89.7% for the graduating class of 2019, which is reported in November of 2020, to 94% for the graduating class of 2023, which is reported in 2024. In the following slide, Mr. Horner is going to go over on one important detail about how we're looking at graduation, which is one of our key lagging indicators.
Good evening, board members, President Murray, Superintendent Ramsey. Just a quick note, very specific to what data you're going to look at here in just a few minutes. For the class, for the 21-22 accountability, we're actually using the class of 20 graduation rate. So this is just a reminder of a couple of things. Number one, the graduation rate is always a year lagging in order for TEA to spend time calculating 4-year, 5-year, 6-year graduation rates, all the college, career, military readiness measures that go into college. So every time you see the graduation rate, it's always a lagging year. And very specifically in this case, the class of 2020 is going to be reported, and that happens to be the year that we shut down for COVID-19. So on this slide, you'll see in 2019, the class of 19 graduation rate was actually for 4-year was 89.7. Last year, when we were revising and working through the new board goals, we established 89.7 as a baseline based on just the unpredictability and the issues that we knew with the data centered around serving kids during that closure during COVID. So we have set the baseline based on the previous year, not wanting to go backwards, and we set it at 89.7. Well, in fact, our target was 89.7, and you'll see on this slide here, the class of 2020 had a 4-year graduation rate of 89.7.
We thought it was important to also highlight, how are we looking at our graduates across all of our student groups? This highlights our 4-year graduation rate across all of our subgroups here in the district. And one of the things that we especially wanted to point out was the significant increase of our emerging bilingual 4-year graduation rate, which saw a record high of 84.5% from the previous year to 73.1. Something else that's important to highlight as we look at this data across all of our student groups is that MISD has shown significant improvement in closing the graduation gap between all of our subgroups in comparison to our all group, which I think is something to really take a step and take a step back and to celebrate, because that's an enormous feat and also a testament to what our incredible teachers and school staff are doing at our buildings to ensure that our students are walking across the stage.
This next slide, you'll see we're actually continuing to celebrate because although board goal is very specific to 4-year graduation rate, I mentioned that we also calculate a 5-year and a 6-year graduation rate. So accountability, state of Texas accountability, allows us to use the better of the two, whether it's the 4-year or the 5-year accountability graduation rate for accountability. So what you see here on the left are the 4-year rates, and in the middle, the 5-year rates, and celebrating the 6-year rate, because this slide is there to show you we had record highs for the two comprehensive high schools, 95.5 and 93.5 for Midland High and Legacy High School for their 6-year graduation rate. We've never attained such a rate, and so we wanted to highlight that just as a tribute to the work that the campuses are doing. Speaking of the work, so we had said 89.7 was the target and what we attained. The next steps are really, we're looking student by student every 6 weeks, because every 6 weeks counts, starting with that first year they start getting high school credit. So we're looking at intervention and what ways we can make sure they're earning credit. We're looking at recovery models and how we're using collegiate coaches and other staff in order to make sure that we're addressing those that are significantly off track. We're also looking at very specific teacher data and how teachers are using that to really work on performance within the classroom. We found that strategies that teachers have ownership of that credit recovery before it ever becomes a failing grade for the semester is one of the best strategies and most successful ways we can keep students on track. We're also looking at intercession in February. So in October, we use intercession for seniors and that needed the IGC, the Individual Graduation Committee. We're looking at that same practice in February using the IGCs, but also looking at students that need credit, whether it is for failing previous courses or even using it for attendance recovery. Finally, it's all about systems, and there's a lot of paperwork and items, that tremendous amount of work that goes into calculating kid by kid. So we're really looking at levers and transcripts alongside campus staff in order to make sure those systems are tight.
With that being said, are there any questions from the board?
Motion to approve.
I do. The 4-year, 5-year, and 6-year, where is that? Are you calculating that out from the, where's that calculation start? Does that start in 2015, 16 type deal, or does it start now and go to the future?
Great question. So the 4-year graduation rate starts the first year they're enrolled as a first-time ninth grader. So the 4-year graduation rate is literally, I start in this school year 21-22. Do I actually complete in a complete 4 years? 5-year graduation rate takes that same data and extends it into the next year. And we have systems. We do have students that come back, and we have both night school, summer school. We have Coleman High School that serves these students that does it both in a 5-year model. So traditionally, most of those students, if they don't finish the 4, we are targeting trying to support them to get in the 5th-year graduation rate. And then we have some students that do come back even a 6-year. So the state allows us to use the best of the 2, 4, and 5, but the 6 year is also calculated because it shows that tenacity of that student that may not have gotten in that first 4 years.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Trischetti. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Booker. I do want to ask, any other questions from the board? I did want to ask one other question because I think I had this discussion with Dr. Ramsey, but I believe there's some successes at Coleman High School this year also. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So we didn't necessarily report campuses separately, although on the 5 and 6 year rate, you see the highlights of the 2 comprehensive schools. But we've for several years seen the 4-year and 5-year graduation rate fall below the federal accountability level of 67.7 is the criteria. So for the last 2 years, we've been above that. So we've grown and continue to grow. Some of that, as we continue to work through the rebuild of the redesigned Coleman, will have a continued positive impact on the college and career readiness, those kind of factors. But yes, sir, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but we saw growth on both the 4-year and 5-year rates for Coleman for the last 2 classes that are reported.
Great, thank you.
I have a question, President Murray. Can we go back to the utilization of the intercession? So you used a acronym that I'm not sure I'm familiar with. I'm still in that alphabet soup. Can you let me know?
I did, yes,
what
ma'am.
that
I
is?
used the IGC committee. So it is the Individualized Graduation Committee. So the state allows for students, they are required to graduate, they're required to complete 5 in-course exams, successfully pass them. So the IGC actually is a system that if a student fails, say, 4 of the 5, they are allowed to put a portfolio together for that class that they failed. And that IGC committee actually sets all the criteria. They could say, you're required to go to intercession. You're required to get that intervention for that English 2 test that you haven't passed. You're required to attempt it and attempt to pass it again. And if you don't pass it, then the IGC committee has the authority by the state of Texas to be able to say, you are now, we will accept the work you completed as criteria to pass that fifth in-course exam.
Okay, so how exactly does that work into the week of intercession? If are you saying that they work specifically on that test or credit, and it's only one, it's not multiple, is that correct?
So it is.
I'm just trying to understand.
So it is possible. They allow you to go up to 2 exams, and there's some criteria and they're very specific. But the individual graduation committee meets with the parent and meets with the student at the fall of their senior year. Once we see that they haven't met those in-course exam criteria. And that IGC committee actually puts forth the criteria that student has to meet in order to say they successfully met the criteria of the IGC. And what we're using is, in some cases, that student needs that extra 4 days of work for, say, English 2. And so it is possible that we would say the intercession is required for that IGC student for that period. It's not across the board standard, but it is something that we've used, just like we use it for attendance recovery mode, et cetera.
So if there wasn't an intercession, how would you go about handling this piece or attendance recovery, just out of curiosity?
That is a great question. Typically, we use Saturday opportunities. They're harder to coordinate where you have the 4 solid days. We use after-school tutorials. We actually can put them in another class and they double up, say, in that English 2 period, and they work on their portfolio, which the portfolio piece is just the documentation, and it's really artifacts that shows that they've met that criteria. But we work, if we didn't have intercession, we would be doing it Saturdays after schools and lunchtime.
Okay,
in summer.
Last question, and I know we don't have the intercession data in front of us, but do you know how many kids utilized this during intercession at our secondary level?
We looked that up this morning, 147 seniors that were at risk attending intercession. I can't say that 100% of those 147 seniors had an IGC, but 147 seniors, we really prioritized that senior group for the high school courses, for high school intercession.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Trischetti, a second by Mr. Booker. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. The next item is item 2, Board Goal GPM 1.1. And we have Ms. Warren coming to present to us. Welcome, Ms. Warren.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President Murray, Dr. Ramsey, and members of the board. Tonight I will be talking with you about Goal Progress Measure 1.1. As a review, it does fall under Goal 1, which is reading. Oh, I'm sorry. Who has the clicker? Thank you. There we go. So Goal Progress Measure 1 falls under reading. The percentage of second grade students on track to read at grade level or above will increase from 75% to 76% by August 2023, measured with an assessment such as iStation. I want to make sure that we remember from last month that we switched from iStation last year to MAP this year. So it says such as iStation, just using the language that's approved with the LSG, but I wanted to make that clarification. Goal progress measure 1.1 is specific to pre-kindergarten. So as we move forward, we will see that to be eligible for pre-kindergarten, you have to be 4 as of September 1st, on or before. And then we have our eligibility criteria beyond that. Emergent bilingual, you'll recognize that language prior was English learners, and so now we are calling that emergent bilingual. Low SES, which is our low socioeconomic status students, homeless, active parents who are active duty of the armed forces, or parents who were members of the armed forces, current or previous in foster care placement, which there's been an update to that it used to be just Texas foster care placement, but now it's national foster care placement, and Star of Texas award eligible. We also purchased a new curriculum that was approved through Proclamation 2021 this last school year, and we are now implementing that in our classrooms. That is Solvis, 3 Cheers for Pre-K, which has our themed units. There are 9 of them that are explored throughout the school year with purposeful play, SEL components, hands-on activities, family engagement platforms such as Ready Rosie for our families, and for our bilingual classrooms, our biliteracy toolkit. This is an interesting slide for me to show you tonight. This shows our pre-kindergarten enrollment trends. We had this last school year a low of 781 students in our pre-kindergarten classrooms. We attribute that to our COVID cases that we had. Although we had virtual pre-K for our students, many families chose to just keep their students home and not enroll them in pre-K. So we have built our enrollment back up to 921, which is measurable against our pre-COVID numbers. I think it's also important to note that 781 students was at snapshot last year. And as our COVID response mitigation measures allowed our COVID cases to go down, our enrollment actually increased by end of school year. So that 921 was a lot of increase enrollment that carried over into this school year with the mentality that COVID is reducing in our area and parents are putting their students in school. Our testing window was in November this month, November 7th through November 24th. Our middle of year collection date will be in January and our end of year will be in April. Our assessment we use is Children's Learning Institute Assessment, CLI Engage. We use kinder through 12th, our MAP assessment, but MAP is only a K through 12 assessment. It is nationally normed, and our CLI Engage is a Texas assessment that is aligned to our nationally normed MAP assessment. So this data should align directly with our MAP assessment. It is given face-to-face, one-on-one, and we do have an opportunity for our teachers to provide input from anecdotal note-taking in the classroom to input into this assessment data. So for goal progress measure 1.1, we take the percentage of pre-K students who are producing at least 40 letter sounds on a standards-based assessment, and we want them to be at least at 86% by the end of the school year 2023. You can see the areas that we assess with CLI Engage, but we are only pulling out that letter sounds data for the data you'll see for GPM 1.1. Also would like to point out that the goal says 40 letter sounds, but if you go to the pre-kindergarten guidelines, which are aligned to the TEKS, you'll see that it's only 20 letter sounds that they need to know by the end of pre-K. So our goal that we have for Midland ISD is double what we expect pre-kindergarten students to achieve in the state of Texas, which also leads to a celebration that you'll see. So in 2021, we started the school year out with 7% of our students already meeting this goal, then led to 49% by middle of year, and end of year 78%. This school year, we're starting out with exactly the same data. I think the decimal point was taken away, but it was actually 7.6, I believe, is where we're starting for this school year. You can see the trend trajectory that if we started at 7%, halfway then to our goal and the endpoint where we should shoot for, we did have our middle of year data at 49%, which should have put us on track to meet that goal last year. However, if you'll remember how I said that at the end of last year, we had a lot of students enroll at the end of the school year because the COVID cases were decreasing. Well, those students took the end of year assessment without that beginning and middle of year instruction. So with our continuous enrollment, our students coming to school, we fully anticipate meeting this goal by the end of the school year. I do want to go ahead and preview some information with you, which is GPM 3.2. There is not a reporting period for beginning of year for this data, but I think it's important for you to see a holistic view of pre-K. So GPM 3.2 measures math. It says that the percentage of pre-K students scoring proficient on a math standards-based assessment will be at 91% by August 2023. And you can see all the areas that that assessment measures. That assessment does not take just one skill, but a holistic view of the student and their math skills. And you can see our data from last year and our beginning of year data this year. And again, the trajectory shows that we should be on target to meet this by the end of this school year. So next steps, what are we doing? We have implemented our new curriculum at the beginning of the school year. We've trained our teachers before school started with continuous on-demand training for our staff as needed. We're using visual phonics. With my experience in a regional day school program for the deaf in the past, I know how important it is to have that kinesthetic piece to learning phonics, so they learn a sign that goes with that sound to help them connect that. We utilize professional learning communities for our teachers to learn from each other. We mentor, coach, provide additional professional development in the area of social emotional learning, classroom management, in any area that we see a need. We also assess using progress monitoring, watching our data, making sure that we're targeting each student individually. We are working on some engaging parent activities that we're excited to teach you about and our community about that will roll out very soon. And then also we want to expand the 70 students that attended the fall intercession and invite even more pre-K students to intercession in the spring so that we can help them meet their goal by the end of this school year. Do you have any questions?
I have a motion to approve by Mr. Trischetti.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Marquez. Do we have any discussion?
I just want to make a comment that I really appreciate your work and the building blocks for obviously the future AMISD and the students are moving forward. So the data looks real good and promising. So it's like I said, I've always said this since I've been on the board, but we don't give enough recognition out to the good work that goes on in the district. And, you know, when you see this stuff, it's, you know, it's heartwarming to see that there's progress being made and a lot of hard work that's going into it. So I'm hopeful that in the spring intercession, there'll be more students that join and take advantage of the time to be able to come back. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Joyner?
Just really quickly, you said 74 kids attended intercession at the pre-K level?
70.
Oh, 70, okay. And then how many were invited? Do you know?
Good question. I do have someone here who is an expert with that data. Her name is Andrea Messick. She is our Director of Early Childhood, so I'm going to defer that question to her.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. So the number of students that we invited, our goal was to invite 10 per classroom, and that would have been monolingual and bilingual classrooms, but not as many were invited because of what the focus was on higher grade levels for the fall intercession, and so that's why we are trying to capture more pre-kindergarten students going into the spring intercession.
Okay, and then I don't know if you guys, this is a little bit off topic, but it lends itself to the conversation about our enrollment at the pre-K level. I know you laid out the criteria that has to be met currently, but do we have more capacity for pre-K, or are we all the way full? Are we turning kids away that meet the criteria? Where do we kind of align in the enrollment?
So for a 4-year-old pre-K, we're not allowed to have a cap. So if they apply and they're eligible, we have to serve them. Okay. As far as capacity goes, that can't be a constraint for us. We have to find a way to serve them. 3-year-old pre-K is something that a lot of school districts do, and that you can cap 3-year-old pre-K. We do not serve 3-year-old pre-K beyond LEAP classrooms at this time.
So really, as a district, we could grow this program much more broadly, assuming that we meet the criteria and hopefully can expand what the criteria is. That would be my hope. Okay, thank you. That's what I need.
Any other questions? All right, we have a motion by Mr. Trisketti, a second by Mr. Marquez. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you, ladies. Okay, the time is now 6:41, and we will move into item 7B, TEA waiver, alternative seventh grade reading instrument. Mr. Horner, welcome back.
Thank you, President Murray. As a school district, we're required to administer a reading instrument adopted by the commissioner for students in seventh grade that have not successfully passed STAR. We're allowed to request a waiver in order to take an instrument, to use an instrument other than what's on the commissioner's approved list. So we have used MAP growth as a method to not only test seventh grade students that haven't successfully passed the sixth grade STAR, but in all students, because we're using MAP growth to really, the insights from that to drive instruction for all seventh graders. So we are requesting the board approve a waiver to allow MAP growth to be substituted in place of the ISIP, which would have came from the iStation assessment that we've used previously.
I've got a question.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Trisketti. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Davis. Mr. Marquez has a question.
So I was a bit confused, but which is the program that the commissioner, which one is he suggesting, out of curiosity?
There's a list of 5 assessments.
Oh, okay. It's not a specific one.
Not a specific one, yes, sir.
Okay. That answers my question.
Okay. Mr. Trisketti has a question.
Mine piggybacks off that. If I know we made the transition from iStation to MAP, we all got educated on that. But if MAP is this national baseline, why isn't it on the commissioner's list? Why are we having to do a waiver?
You said it. It is a national baseline and not a Texas-specific item. ISIP, for example, was one that was championed by TEA whenever they provided iStation free for a period of time for schools.
No concern that the commissioner says, no, I'm not granting you a waiver. We're not worried about.
No, sir. Once we're not concerned with the approval for the waiver will not be based on the approval for the waiver is not a concern.
Based on the approval.
Yes, it will not be a concern.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the submission of a waiver to TEA regarding the alternate seventh grade reading instruments for 2021, 2022 school year by Mr. Trisketti, a second by Mr. Davis. Any other discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. That's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Horner.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is great for us accountants, and Mr. Dodds will welcome you to the podium. There may be 2 of us in the room.
Yes, and I'm not one of them. Anyway, thank you, President Murray, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Ramsey. Wish you get well soon. Today I'm going to sidestep and let our Jeremy Stevens, he's a partner of Ide Bailey, LLP, present our 2021 audit.
Thank you.
Mr. Stevens, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Good evening, members of the board. Yes, I'm Jeremy Stevens with Ide Bailey, and our firm has completed the audits of the financial statements of the district as of and for the year ended June 30th of 2021. Sorry. Oh, okay. Left a copy of those financial statements. Did not have any adjusting journal entries as a result of audit procedures. Additionally, we are not reporting any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls over financial reporting. So overall, just a good, clean audit year. So that being said, I'll briefly go over the financial statements as well as the presentation. Beginning with our independent auditors report, which starts on page number 10 of that audited financial statement packet. Also have it kind of summarized up on the slide, but our audit report really kind of makes three main points. First of all, it does identify that management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Additionally, management is responsible for the design and implementation of internal controls. It then goes on to describe our responsibility as auditor, which is to express an opinion as to whether these financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. There's some additional narrative regarding our approach to internal controls, which is that we gain an understanding of the district's internal controls, that we can design our audit procedures. However, we do not test those internal controls to an extent that allows us to express an opinion on them. So we're not expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of internal controls. And lastly is our opinion, which can be found at the top of page number 11. Basically, it states that in our opinion, these financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the district. So this is what's known as an unmodified opinion or a clean audit report. Highest level of assurance a firm can provide that a set of financial statements is presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Now moving ahead to some of the basic financial statements themselves, I'll start on page number 25 with the statement of net position. And this particular statement provides a snapshot of all assets and liabilities of the district at a consolidated level. It's presented on what's known as the accrual basis of accounting. So it includes all assets and liabilities of the district, including those which are considered long-term. I've got a very summarized version of this statement up on the slide. You'll see at the end of the current fiscal year, total assets were approximately $782 million. In comparison to last year, that's an increase of about $60 million. As far as individual line items, that growth was occurred in. Assets are primarily what increased rather than deferred outflows of resources, but total assets increase largely in cash and investments. If you're looking at page number 25 in the statement of net position, the total of cash and investments this year totaled about $380 million at year end. That's up about $94 million in comparison to last year. That increase in cash was offset a little bit by a reduction in amounts due from other governments. Amounts due from other governments at the end of the current fiscal year is about $15 million. That's a decrease from last year of about $56 million. Primarily, that's just kind of a timing difference on when payments came in from TEA. Last year, a large payment came in after year end. This year, it came in before year end. So that kind of driving the reduction in the amounts due from other governments this year, and that's offset with that increase in cash and investments. As far as liabilities and deferred inflows of resources, you'll see it's about $575 million at the end of this current fiscal year. It was about $576 million last year, so pretty comparable year over year. Largest portion of liabilities are the non-current liabilities. That's the district's bonds payable, net pension liability, and the net OPEB liability. Those line items combined up to about $321 million at the end of the current fiscal year. So a reduction of about $23 million in comparison to last year. If you added up your assets less your liabilities, you get that total net position at year end is about $207 million. It's an increase over last year of about $62 million. Moving on to the next statement that I'll touch on, which is the balance sheet of governmental funds. This particular statement is on page number 27. And again, it provides a snapshot of assets and liabilities of the district. However, this statement is presented on what's known as the modified accrual basis of accounting. So it does not include long-term assets, such as capital assets of the district. Also, it does not include long-term liabilities of the district. So the bonds payable, the net pension liability, and that OPEB liability are excluded from this statement. This statement's focus is on current assets and current liabilities. At year end, under this basis of accounting, you'll see total assets of the district are about $405 million. At the end of the previous fiscal year is about $366 million. So it was an increase of about $39 million year over year. Again, cash and investments at the top of the slide, you'll see is about $370 million this year. Again, last year is about $278 million. So it was an increase in cash and investments of about $92 million year over year. And then you'll see that increase is offset by that reduction in receivables that I referred to earlier. As noted on the slide, receivables at the end of the current fiscal year is about 26 million. That's all receivables, taxes, property taxes receivable, amounts due from other governments and so forth. Last year is about 77 million. So there's that reduction again in receivables of approximately $56 million. As far as liabilities and deferred inflows of resources for the district, approximately 192 million at the end of the current fiscal year. It's about 176 million last year. So it's a reduction of about $16 million year over year. If you look at the individual line items, you'll see the largest portion of the liabilities are the amounts due to other governments. That's the recapture payment that's due to the state of Texas at the end of the fiscal year. It's about 154.5 million this year. Last year was about 139 million. So that's where the bulk of the increase in total liabilities is held at on this particular statement. It's an increase of about $16 million. If you add it up, you get your assets less your liabilities. You get your fund balance at the end of the current year is about 214 million. Last year is about 190 million. That fund balance, you'll note at the bottom of the page, is divided up into several different categories. Again, summarized up on the slide. Allocated between non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. You'll see the bulk of the growth in fund balances in the assigned fund balance is up to about $65 million this year. Those are amounts that the district has assigned for future capital commitments, construction, capital expenditures, and so forth. And then also there's a portion of that is assigned in anticipation of reduced revenues from the state of Texas as certain formula transition grants expire over the next year, couple of years. So that's kind of the growth in that assigned fund balance. Unassigned fund balance, there at the bottom, is about $106 million. Last year it's about $110 million. One metric that you can use to gauge the unassigned fund balance is to compare it to the average monthly expenditures in the general fund. I did that calculation based off of the expenditures for the year ended June 30, 2021. It was approximately 3 times the average monthly general fund expenditures. TEA generally recommends to keep about a 3-month reserve in unassigned fund balance. So you're kind of right in line with the TEA recommendation there. And the last statement that I will touch on is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balance. It's found on page number 29 of the audited financial statements. Again, I've summarized it up on the slide. Total revenues for the current fiscal year is approximately $510 million. That's an increase of about $18 million over last fiscal year. Again, divided up between local, state, and federal revenues. Local and state revenues, pretty comparable year over year. Local revenues is largely property taxes. The state program revenues is largely aid received from the state. Federal program revenues consist of the various federal programs of the district. That's where the bulk of the increase in revenues was at. It's up to about 36 million this year, is about 23 million last year. Those additional federal programs, largely the result of additional funding from the federal government through the various COVID programs. The elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund was included in there, as well as the coronavirus relief funds. So those additional kind of COVID funding from the U.S. government is kind of driving that number up. And lastly, for expenses of the district, you'll see it's about 481 million. This current fiscal year is about 428 million last fiscal year. Largest expenditure category of the district is your instructional expenditures at about 174 million this year. That's up about $30 million in comparison to last year. If you look at your instruction expenditures as a proportion of total expenditures of the district, excluding the recapture payment to the state of Texas, instructional expenditures accounted for about 53.5% of expenditures this year. In the previous fiscal year, that was about 49.5%. Like I mentioned, the next largest expenditure category is that intergovernmental. Like I said, that's largely the recapture payment to the state of Texas. You'll see it's up there. It's about that 155 million in the current fiscal year. The only other item I was going to note as far as expenditures, debt service expenditures in the current fiscal year is about $19 million. That's the amount of principal and interest that was paid against the bonds in the current fiscal year. The district did do a bond refunding in the current fiscal year, which is anticipated to reduce future bond principal and interest payments over the life of the new bonds, about $16.5 million. So that will show up in future kind of debt service expenditures in future years. And that was everything for the financial statements I was going to mention. There are two other reports in the back that we are issuing. The first is on page number 125. Again, I've summarized it up on the slide. This particular report on page number 125 is our report on internal control over financial reporting and noncompliance. Again, this report reiterates that we're not expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of internal controls. However, if we identified any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls or any instances of noncompliance, those will be reported here. Again, happy to report there are no such items. And then lastly is our report on compliance for each major federal program under the uniform guidance. That's on page number 127. This is the report where we communicate the results of our single audit of the district. Each year, as a part of our audit, we select what are determined to be the major federal programs of the district. And then we perform procedures over those programs to enable ourselves to express an opinion as to whether the district complied with the requirements of those programs. This again is where we're communicating that. Just going through that report, again, it identifies that management is responsible for compliance. It then describes our responsibility, which is to express an opinion on compliance for the district for those federal programs. For the current fiscal year, we did test the child nutrition program, ESSER, and CRF, and then the charter school federal program were our major federal programs that were tested. The opinion on those four major programs is found at the bottom of page number 127, where we did state that the district did comply, in our opinion, with the compliance requirements of that program or those programs. So again, this is a unmodified opinion on compliance as well for the district. I believe that is everything that I had prepared. So with that, are there any questions?
Board, the Finance Committee met last week and went through this audit report extensively with Mr. Stevens and Mr. Dodds, and we have agreed to approve this as reported. And so are there any other discussions? May I have a motion?
I move.
Moved by Mr. Marquez, a second by Mr. Bishop. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dodds, and for your group and Carla and all the finance group that went through and took care of this. What we didn't mention is this is a first-time report that we've done, well, maybe not first time, several years that we've done, that it's a full, I want to say CAPRA, but it's not, it's ACFR report. And so it includes a lot more information than normal, and our finance team with the auditors pulled all that off and did a great job. So we want to say thank you to you guys for the hard work.
Well, thank you. And I just want to say thank you for the finance team and everybody else that participated, and especially Arturo Valenzuela and Carla Martin. They spearheaded making sure that we did do an annual comprehensive financial report. And that has been a goal of the finance team for a good while, even before I got here. So to be able to pull it off and be able to do everything it needs to do is a great accomplishment for the district. And so thank y'all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 7D, and I'm going to make this pretty quick and painless tonight because we have a pretty general consensus on the previous quarter tracker. I'm going to run down the categories because we have 6 out of 7 agreeing on all categories. And so Vision 1, a 12, Vision 2, a 12, Vision 3, a 9, Vision 4, a 4, Accountability 1, a 4, Accountability 2, a 2, Structure 4, Advocacy 1, Unity 9, and that totals 57. And we have pretty much agreement across the board for that. And I would say that is a low number. That's not a number we achieved to are striving to get to, but there have been things that we've been unable to accomplish because of COVID as far as, and we heard tonight in some of the general comments about being able to get out in the community and explain some of our goals and pass on some of this Lone Star governance. So 57 is that score. For the next quarter, we anticipate Vision 1, 15, Vision 2, 15, Vision 3, 10, Vision 4, 5, Accountability 1, 12, Accountability 2, 5, Structure 4, Advocacy 3, Unity 10, for a total score of 79. Board, do I have any discussion or a motion? Motion by Mr. Bishop to approve, a second by Mr. Booker. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Thank you, it's unanimous. The next item on the agenda is item 7E, consider Midland Central Appraisal District MCAD Board of Directors. Mr. Dodds. You still here? Oh, Ms. Martin, thank you for coming up.
I'll just make a motion if it makes it easier. Yeah, they're all reappointees, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so move.
We have a second. Second by Mr. Bishop. And let me read just the names of the three delegates for MISD. Just for the record, if I can find it. Okay. Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Kimek, and I probably butchered that, and Kelly Cook are our three representatives. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. If you have a question? Okay, let me hold that vote for.
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Can you tell me how long each person has served as our representative? Does anyone have that information?
What's that?
How long each person has served as our representative?
No, I don't, and it wasn't emailed to me by,
Okay.
the
Appraisal District.
MCAD. Now, I know Mr. Kennedy, after he got off the board here, then he was asked to run for our representative, so he's only been on since that. They
Okay.
serve a 2-year term, but I don't, and I want to say, I don't want to say, because I'm not sure if there is a max term limit on how long they can serve, but
Okay.
anyway.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you.
I'll get that information to you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 8, closed session. The time is 7:02. We will move into closed sessions in accordance with Government Code Section 551.071 for the purpose of private consultation with the board's attorney on any or all subject matters authorized by law, and Section 551.074 for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, to hear complaints or charges against public officer or employee. We do not expect or anticipate action arising from closed session, and thank you, and we will return. The time is now 9:14, and we're emerging from closed session. There are no items arising for action, and we will adjourn at 9:14. Thank you.